Principles of Accounting, Chapter 15. So we're going to go back to, we started this semester with Chapter 16, and we've gone through Chapter 24. Now we're going to go back and catch Chapter 15 and 14 before we finish Chapters 25 and 26. So Chapter 15 talks about global accounting and international accounting within global companies. So one of the first things we talk about is International Financial Reporting Standards, or IFRS. So the International Financial Reporting Standards are the global standards around the country, where we try to find common ground between different countries' generally accepted accounting principles. So we have US GAAP in the United States, but each country has their own individual accounting standards for that country. What IFRS and the International Accounting Standards Board try to do through IFRS is develop standards that companies that are operating in multiple countries can use instead of creating all kinds of different financial records. So they try to come to agreement on different accounting standards within different countries. So the International Accounting Standards Board, or IASB, has 14 full-time members, and they work with FASB, which is the United States Financial Accounting Standards Board, and other countries' accounting standards boards in order to create regulations that global companies can use for their accounting records. As we'll see further on in this chapter, accounting records can get very complex when we work in a lot of different countries. So when we're creating standards, we have to understand the diversity of business and cultures in different countries, the accounting rules and regulations in different countries, economic conditions in all of these countries, the political and legal structures that affect how business is done in multiple countries, and the infrastructure around the world. We're going to talk about some of these further in depth. So globalization is what happens as we engage in cross-border trade and operations. So many corporations have operations in different countries, and even those that don't have operations in different countries, it's quite likely that they are at some time buying parts and services from other countries. So it's a continuous thing, whether we're using international trade, whether we're using technology in another country, we're just outsourcing customer services, whether we're working with another country in some kind of a partnership. So on this slide, we see what the world's largest multinational companies are. So here we have the United States had, as of 2015, 128 multinational companies. So companies operating in multiple countries. China had 98, Japan had 54, France had 31, the United Kingdom had 29, and Germany had 28. Think about some multinational companies that you might be able to name. For one, Japan has Toyota, and many, many years ago, all of Toyota manufacturing was done in Japan. Well, shipping an entirely built car is extremely expensive. So Japan then opened up manufacturing plants in the United States. And instead of shipping cars over here, they just ship parts over here, and they assemble the cars that they sell in the United States in the United States. So that is becoming more common in other countries too. Rather than shipping completely finished goods, we might ship parts to another company, have it assembled in that country, and then sold in that country. Some basic terminology for globalization. One is exporting. So this is selling a good or service in another country. Okay. International licensing. So the agreement between a company and a foreign party allowing the use of trademarks, patents, technology, designs, processes, intellectual property, or other proprietary advantage. So many multinational food companies are involved in some form of international product licensing, especially companies like McDonald's that they don't open their own new stores. Instead, they franchise. And so almost all of their locations have different owners that are franchising and just have a contractual agreement to use the McDonald's trademark and products. An international joint venture is a company owned by two or more companies from different countries. And then we have a wholly owned international subsidiary. So this is when a company uses its funds to either build or purchase 100% equity control of a foreign subsidiary. So a part of their company that is built from the ground up in a different country. Many companies just use global sourcing, which manufacturing. Global sourcing is extremely common in the fashion industry, where there are different manufacturers of clothing and they contract out with multiple companies. For example, you could walk into a clothing manufacturer and they could have contracts going for Walmart and Gap and Banana Republic and Target all at the same time. And so they don't actually own those manufacturing plants, they're just contracting with them. This is also very similar for shoe companies. So Nike doesn't own manufacturing plants in multiple countries, they contract with manufacturing plants that might make Nikes on some days and then be making Reeboks or Adidas on other days. So we have exporting, license and joint venture, wholly owned subsidiary, and then global sourcing. So companies that wish to globalize usually start by just exporting products, like I talked about with Toyota. So first we just ship fully built Toyotas to different countries. And then we start making partnerships in those countries. And then eventually we just own a manufacturing plant there because it is easier to ship parts there and manufacture them in the country than it is to ship cars from Japan to the United States. There are many different factors that affect doing international business. So one is different cultures have different rules and regulations within businesses. We have different technology and infrastructure available to us in different areas. Different cultures have different countries have different economic systems. We also have very different political and legal systems. So we'll start with political and legal systems. We have differing regulations for accounting, business licensing, taxes, tariffs, exporting. Some countries have restrictions on foreign ownership percentage. So if a country says a foreign company can only come in and own 25% of any company, then we have to create partnerships with companies that are owned within that country in order to have a presence there. We could have restrictions on currency flows. There could be trade agreements. There are trade agreements between countries that say what materials can be sent where. We might have tax incentives. There can be different policies and practices that affect the amount of here we have the educational level of citizens. So who's available to work for us if we build an organization there? in that area? What if the government is unstable, or there's potential for government control or government seizure of assets? There are also countries where we have government regulations that require bribery. That's not allowed in the US or for US corporations, as we'll see further along in this chapter. We also have different economic systems. So the first economic system we talk about is a planned economy. So this is a government uses central planning to allocate resources, and the government determines the output. All land and production facilities are government owned. So the former Soviet Union used central planning and had planned economies. China still uses central planning and has a planned economy. We also have market economies. So ownership of the land and production are private, or corporations can own them. Markets dictate what resources are available, and companies who used to operate in a planned economy might have a lot of problems when attempting to operate in a market economy. The opposite is also true. Companies that are used to market economies are going to struggle in a planned economy. So in some countries, businesses arrange themselves into industrial organizations as a method of raising capital. This is common in South Korea and Japan, where companies create conglomerates that represent different industries. So we can group things together: customers, suppliers. Here we have that they usually also contain a bank, and they work together in order to make things happen. So the suppliers receive loans from the bank that they are working with, and any technology and supply agreements and stuff is all part of this internal system. These are illegal in the United States. So the US cannot create organized business groups like are found within other countries. And